This is John Beethan with AlternativeHealthTools.com, the podcast, and today this is episode 54. It's titled Crohn's and Bipolar Disorder, A Story of Hope and Recovery, subtitled, Recovery is Remembering Who You Are and Using Your Strengths to Become All That You Were Meant to Be. Today, we have Serena Goldsmith on the show. It's taken me 6 months to get her in the studio, and finally today it happened. Although we're everywhere, and you can get us on iTunes and Google Play Music, Stitcher, Android, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, RSS subscription, subscribe by mail, and also on YouTube, the easiest way for you to get our content, for you, and to share it with others, is by going to our website and downloading the app. And if you just go to AlternativeHealthTools.com, and at the top you'll see a menu item for About the App. And you just click on the red spot there that says Get the App Here, and you can just download it from there. The other way to do this is do a search in your Google or iPhone store. And just do a search for Alternative Health Tools, and you'll see the app there and download it. This episode has extensive resources and information, and we're including that within the app, which is another good reason to download the app. So if you go in the app, you'll see the links to the PDFs and everything else that we're going to be including with this particular episode. So do enjoy. So welcome back, everyone, to Alternative Health Tools, the podcast. And if I have it right, this will be episode 54 with Serena Goldsmith, who I've been trying to get into the studio for, 6 months, Serena?
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it has been.
Time flies.
It flies, and everything in its perfect time. Yeah.
I agree.
So we were just talking about what we're going to talk about, and we're not sure what the title's going to be, but it's going to be around healing bipolar and depression, which I'm really excited to. Part of the reason is because the stigma that we had talked about earlier, there's stigma about, I really have no idea what it is. When I lived in Santa Fe, I had a really close friend of mine that was quote unquote bipolar, but it was like, I couldn't tell. I didn't know what was going on, So,
yeah, and I think that's one of the things. People who do struggle with symptoms of mental health conditions are afraid to talk about it often because they don't want to be judged by people because of that stigma, not just external stigma, but also internalized stigma from growing up in the society that, kind of gives us sometimes subtle messages that it's not okay to experience these things.
Yeah. Well, for those people that have listened to this show a lot, they know I think labels are for pickle jars.
Yes, so, I tend to agree.
Yeah, good. So we're not going to make the focus of this episode about you, but it did inform you on your career.
Yes, for sure. My healing journey, starting from the age of 20, has led me to the work that I do now and to a lot of the understandings that I have, perspectives on health and healing and recovery, in mental health conditions and physical health conditions.
Okay.
When I was 20, I started having symptoms, physical symptoms and mental health symptoms. And I ended up being diagnosed with both Crohn's disease and bipolar disorder right at the same time in my life.
Can you tell us one at a time what's Crohn's?
Yes.
And maybe some misconceptions and what's bipolar and misconceptions, just briefly.
Sure. Okay, so Crohn's disease is believed to be an autoimmune condition that affects the intestine, and it has a strong genetic component, so it's actually 4 times more prevalent in the Eastern European Jewish population, and that is my family's background. Yeah, so nice. I was lucky to get that genetic predisposition, you could say. And I started developing symptoms when I was halfway through college. I studied in Mexico for 3 months. And that's kind of when everything started for me health-wise. I was subjected to a lot of different stressors, both physical, mental. So that tends to be how those conditions begin. Typically people with, things like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, other mental health conditions, especially more of the serious ones, tend to come out late teens, early 20s. And same with Crohn's disease, it tends to be that age.
So it's really early and it's all based around stress.
If you ask experts, stress does not cause these things.
Correct.
Like I said, for both of them, there's a strong genetic component. So it's like there's a fragility or a sensitivity. And when that gets stressed, when there's stressors or triggers, environmental triggers, that can kind of start the symptoms. And if it wasn't those things, it could be something else that later may have triggered it. Yeah. So it is possible to start seeing symptoms later in life. But typically it's that age, late teens, early 20s, when people start having symptoms. Yeah. So as far as you asked about misconceptions.
Yes.
So I'll go back a little bit to Crohn's disease. So it affects the intestine. It's the immune system overacting and attacking parts of the intestine and not turning off, when in a normal situation it would turn off. And they don't know why that happens necessarily. And also in bipolar, the brain, well, I've come to learn that the brain and the gut are very intertwined. And so I don't believe it was a coincidence that I developed symptoms of both, that was focused in my gut and also in my brain at the same time.
Do you know the work of Dr. David Perlmutter?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
I've learned a lot about the relationship between gut and brain.
Yeah. And, a lot of our neurotransmitters are created in our gut, and that directly impacts how our brain functions and the balance when that gets off center.
How does it typically get off balance?
There's a lot of things. I mean, in our environment now, there's a lot more toxins, I think, than there used to be.
Yeah.
And people who are sensitive to that or have those predispositions, when imbalances happen, it's not as easy for us extra sensitive people to get that balance back.
And it's more than food, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I was ultimately able to heal both conditions diet has definitely played a huge role in my healing, and lifestyle factors as well. So there's a lot of different things. And those are the things that I share when I work with my clients who have what are termed severe and persistent mental illnesses, diagnoses like mine, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. Those are typically what we see in the clinic where I work. And these lifestyle factors and diet and things like getting good sleep and exercise and having a routine and having a support system and all of those things, I believe, can be even more effective than medication in treating and recovering from those conditions.
Yeah, and I think the person that listens to the show, and thank you very much for doing that out there, is that we say that a lot, is that, food, let food be thy medicine.
Yes.
So was it a cleanup of the diet and going organic, or?
So I was diagnosed when I was 21. I started having symptoms the year before, and I'm 45 now. So this is a 24-year journey we're talking about.
Yeah, by the way, you don't even look close to 45.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I get that a lot. Yeah, which I'm grateful for, I guess, having young genes. My parents look young for their age, too. So
Yeah.
I'm lucky in that sense. So over the years, I did a lot of research, and I took it upon myself to learn as much as I could about diet, because Crohn's directly affects digestion, and it just seemed like common sense that diet would be very connected to the symptoms. And a lot of GI doctors that I was seeing didn't necessarily see it that way. And, MDs in general don't tend to have a lot of nutritional training in medical school.
I've heard about 5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 hours, and that's not to diss doctors at all.
Right.
It's the services they provide are invaluable.
I agree. Yeah. And I've seen over the years them get more open-minded and interested in the area of nutrition and taking it upon themselves to learn, because they don't get a lot of that training in medical school. And so back when I was diagnosed, there was even more, I think, not being open to how much of an impact diet can make on the disease. Right. And there was a lot of, I would hear, well, if you're having a flare-up, then only eat, the brat diet or bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast, things like that. But typically they would say, it's autoimmune, diet isn't going to make much of a difference in it. And I've found that to be not true for me.
Yeah.
And for a lot of other people I know that actually have been able to not just manage, but pretty much heal the condition through diet.
Mm-hmm. So do you recommend people then get a nutritionist?
Yes, I think that can be very beneficial. And for me, I discovered a book called Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's.
Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's. We'll mention that in the show notes, folks. You can get it at alternativehealthtools.com.
Yeah, so the author is Dr. David Klein, and he healed himself of ulcerative colitis over 30 years ago. He was very ill at that time, a young adult in his 20s, and they were about to remove his entire colon because he had gotten so sick, and it was life-threatening at that point. So he found a mentor that taught him about healing principles, especially diet, and it was a natural hygiene type philosophy, which
really
that involves food combining, not just what you eat, but also what you eat at what time and how you mix foods together to make digestion as easy as possible.
So just out of my own curiosity, because years ago I sort of came to some sort of teaching that said, mixing like proteins or meats and starches, not such a good idea.
Right.
And so, I feel that. I mean, if I did that, I could feel that something's not right. Which brings up, I really encourage people to really take notice on how they feel.
Yes.
Right?
I agree. And over the years, like I said, I did a lot of research and I experimented on myself.
Yep.
Because I was searching for answers and I couldn't know whether they worked or not until I tried it and saw. And I'm grateful for that experimentation. There were some times when it actually didn't work out very well. And I got very sick a few times and almost died one time. And yet I don't regret that, because if I hadn't kept trying things, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am now.
So was it a wake-up call for you?
I think the whole journey has been a wake-up call, and it's woken me up to continually desiring self-improvement, to learn about myself, to learn what can help me, and therefore possibly help others.
Nice.
Now that I've learned a lot of different tools for both of these conditions, which I believe are health tools that can be used for all conditions and just for all people desiring more optimal health.
It's very usual here on the show that person sitting across from us had some sort of condition. They were able to heal themselves, and it took them on a journey to do something in that particular area in terms of career. So tell me a little bit about that, because I believe you're an educator, correct? As one thing you do.
Yes, I like to call myself a recovery educator.
Nice.
Because I have a passion for educating people about, especially mental health, because there's still stigma around mental illnesses, not so much around physical illnesses. So that's led me to want to speak more about the bipolar, my experience with bipolar disorder, because there's not as many people willing to stand up and talk about that, their personal lived experience.
There's a little bit of shame involved.
Yeah, I believe so. I've seen it come a long way from the time I was diagnosed 24 years ago. There was a lot more stigma then, and it just wasn't talked about. And people felt like, and families felt like it was something to hide. We had to not tell people what was really going on.
Yeah.
And now I've seen that change a lot over the years, which is wonderful. But we still have a long way to go. And I see it more subtly now, and I see that internalized stigma more often, where people feel it.
They're doing it to themselves.
Yeah, whether there is any external or, that happening in their outer world, they still have that inner, I don't think it's okay to share this, or if they're dating, when do I tell this person about it? What are they going to think? And in my experience, I found that as I got well, for one, got more secure in my health and my confidence in being able to manage the condition. Now I feel extremely confident that I am the master of it. It has no control over my life anymore. So it makes it easy to be very open about it with people, at least for me. And all the speaking I've done, it's been a very healing experience. The more I speak out about my experiences and the work I'm doing now, the more I heal all the past feelings around, oh, it's not okay to talk about, what are people going to think? So I find that when I do talks, it creates a safe space for the whole audience. And in doing this podcast, I hope that it has that effect as well for people listening, that it's okay to talk about this. Not only is it okay, but it's important for everyone's health, because, so many people are affected by mental illness. People don't realize that 1 in 4 people, 25% of our population in the U.S., will at some point in their life be diagnosed with a mental illness. And typically that's depression, anxiety. Those are more common than things like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
So you're not, in your speaking engagements, you're not talking just to the early 20-year-olds or mid-20s or even 30s. You're speaking about mental illness in general, regardless of what age group, right?
Yeah, I find that everyone is touched by it in some way or another, whether they themselves have dealt with symptoms, family members, close friends, spouses. I don't think I've met someone yet who says they have no, it hasn't touched them.
Yeah,
So,
I've had my issues.
Yeah, and
I'm happy to talk about it too. There was a period where I was suicidal. I have a twin sister, and I called her, and she simply said, just promise me one thing: if you get serious about it, you'll call me first. And she's my twin. I'm getting a little emotional about this, but it's like, yeah,
it's a good sister.
Yeah, beautiful sister. She's my twin. My womb mate.
Yes. And I think a lot of times people are afraid about the suicide discussion. And some people think, oh, well, if they have a friend who has shown signs of that or has mentioned it, some people think, oh, well, I shouldn't talk about it too much because it might make them do it. Or I've just seen, people not sure what to do when that comes up. And I think you brought up a really important subject, because I also was very close to ending my life at one point in a very deep depression. In my highs and lows of bipolar, I had very severe symptoms, actually more severe. My manias were longer and more severe and more intense than I think anyone I've yet to meet. And I work in a clinic. We serve 1,000 clients in North County of severe mental illness.
Is that 1,000 a year?
Yeah. I mean, we have total about 1,000 clients.
Right now, you have 1,000 clients?
Approximately.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're a clinic that serves people without private insurance, and often with not a lot of resources, low income. They often deal with homelessness and substance abuse issues. There's a lot of self-medicating for people who have these conditions. It's very common, because when you're having symptoms, if you're extremely depressed or you're having a lot of mood instability or anxiety, it's natural to want to reach for a substance that's going to make you feel better, so it's very common. And we see that a lot. A majority of our clients deal with substance abuse issues in addition to a severe mental illness diagnosis. So,
well, it's interesting. Yeah. I was just thinking there's, we recently did the Alternative Health Tools Practitioners Party, which was fabulous. So glad you were there.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was
great to be there.
And in talking with people, some of these people, as I get to know them, actually, most of these people I've talked to have all had a period in their life where suicide was considered.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the stats are and sort of don't care, but it's pretty darn high.
Yes. It's more common than people realize.
Yeah.
And I think if people knew that they weren't alone in those feelings,
right,
and they felt safe to talk about them, there'd be less people acting on it. Because that's part of it. I know for me, I felt very alone. at that time, even though I had family there to support me and friends who wanted to support me. But when I was in that very dark, hopeless, helpless period of depression, many periods actually, no matter who was around me, I felt alone because I couldn't connect, not even within myself. I felt very disconnected. And from my spiritual life too. That's always been a very strong source of support for me throughout this journey. And in those very deep depressions, I felt like I couldn't access in my connection to God or my spiritual life. And so it was a very isolated, dark place, you know, and
yeah, we've done a podcast, actually a couple of them with Rebecca Freedom. Did you get a chance to talk with her Sunday? She was there briefly.
So. Okay.
So Rebecca's addiction counselor and breakup rehab counselor, and she's just sort of a powerhouse, coming out with a book herself. I mention it because she said in one of the podcasts, I don't remember which episode, that she felt like disease and lack of wellness was an absence of God or spirit or that sort of connection.
Yeah. I would agree with that in my experience, that when I was in those depressions, my vibration was very low. And it's when my vibration has been higher, and I'm talking on an energetic level, that I do feel much more in touch with my spirituality and with, you know, all the good things in the world, and feeling hopeful and feeling excited about life and all the things that I've really felt. You know, my 40s have been the best decade of my life so far.
Yay.
Yeah. So
hey, I'm here to tell you it only gets better.
Yay. Yeah. So I've felt that as my health has improved, both physically, mentally, spiritually, I'm able to maintain that spiritual connection a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know?
So we went down the dark path. Let's go down the light one, which is where, you know, can you talk a little bit about the hope? Yeah.
You know, hope is, I think, one of the most important things in mental health recovery. And it's one of the 5 key recovery concepts that Mary Ellen Copeland's organization talks about. And the Copeland Center is looked up to as kind of the standard for mental health recovery. And I was privileged to become a facilitator for their curriculum. It's called Mental Health Recovery and WRAP, W-R-A-P. And it stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan.
Nice.
And as part of this curriculum, there's 5 key recovery concepts. And so hope is number 1. And there's a reason it's number 1, because we all need hope. And when you're dealing with a serious mental illness, you need it even more, because there's a lot of hopelessness that comes with that. And there's not still, even with all the recovery movement, which has often been led by peers, people with lived experience of mental illness, there's still a lot of people not aware of those ideas that you can be diagnosed with a mental illness and then get to a point where it doesn't affect you anymore, where you're, you know.
Well, it's because it's uncovered, right? It's talked about.
That's one reason.
And you deal with it. Yeah.
And I think in the past, like when people were institutionalized because of mental illness, there was this belief that it was something that you would always have, and it was an identity. And I still see that in our language when we call someone a bipolar or a schizophrenic. It's very, in other types of conditions, we don't refer to the person by their condition. If someone has cancer, we don't say, oh, that's a cancer over there, you know, but yet we say he's a schizophrenic.
Oh, yeah. I see.
And people diagnosed with these, you know, it seems subtle, but it's a big thing. Language is very powerful.
Yeah.
And how we define people take that on and it becomes their identity. And I think that was a big part of my healing path, was changing my identity, that I wasn't just a patient with bipolar disorder and Crohn's disease, that I was a person with a lot of strengths.
Yeah. So you related to yourself differently.
Yeah. And I started seeing all the other things about me, and those conditions became a smaller and smaller part of my life and of my identity. And I think that's really an important area I want to bring out when I talk to people, whether I'm one-on-one with clients or in groups, that there needs to first come a shift in our beliefs. And hope is a big part of that belief, that for one, it's possible to get better. Recovery is possible. And the definition of recovery that I like, which is what I received when or what I learned when I was being trained as a peer support specialist, which is what my title is at the clinic right now, is recovery is remembering who you are and using your strengths to become all that you were meant to be.
Say that one more time.
Recovery is remembering who you are and using your strengths to become all that you were meant to be.
That is a great line and a great subtitle for this episode.
Thanks. Yeah, and it's not my quote. I had to give credit to Recovery Innovations is the organization that trained me to get certified as a peer support specialist. And I really resonated with that statement because when I first heard the word recovery in relation to mental health, I thought, oh, does that mean I'm cured and I never have to take medication again? I never have to think about bipolar again. And it doesn't necessarily mean those things. It doesn't mean it doesn't have to mean those things. But the focus is on more of how we live our life and the meaning and purpose in our life, the fulfillment, how we're having goals and reaching those goals. So, yeah, I like to use that definition with people.
Nice. So when you're working with your clients there in the clinic, I mean, these are the things you're talking about?
Yeah.
Do you have any cases, no names mentioned, about someone that you've been working with a while and in particular case and maybe a shift that they experienced and you experienced as well with them?
Well, I can say that I always learn things from my clients. And I like to empower them to find their own answers because I believe that we all have the answers within us. And so if I were to tell them, oh, you have to do it this way because this is how I did it, that wouldn't feel right to me and it wouldn't be right. I can be there to guide them and to encourage them and to offer suggestions and resources and share relevant parts of my own story and still hope and encourage them, kind of draw out in them the answers that they need to keep moving forward and deciding their path. Everyone has their own unique recovery path, I believe. So without giving specific details of any one client, I would say, I've been there for about 4.5 years now, and sometimes other staff or clinicians will refer clients to me that they kind of are not sure where to go from there, and say, well, let's try Serena. Let's give them to Serena because she can fix it. She can make. And
so it's wonderful that they have that approach. In other words, it's like when you're at a loss, you ask for help.
Oh yeah, it's an awesome team we have.
That's great.
At work, we all work together. It's very collaborative, and I've always felt welcomed as part of the team there. And I know that's not always the case for people who do peer support work. Sometimes they're seen as a little bit lesser than. And I've never felt that way at the clinic where I am. So I think, that needs to change too as people see the value in lived experience. And I also think that the person has to be ready and in a place in their life where, their health is solid enough that they can work and be responsible and do all the things they need to do. Because if they're not in that place yet, I can see how other coworkers could get frustrated or feel like they're not, doing the job they're.
So is it a matter also the clients that come in? Or is it a matter of sort of levels and degrees? In other words, somebody comes in with, I don't know, something that's not so severe. Could you work with them too?
Well, we have specific criteria.
Okay.
Our clinic is with mental health systems, and we're contracted with San Diego County to provide the services that we provide.
Okay, so there's a referral system.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if someone doesn't meet our criteria, we refer them to a provider that can work with them. Okay,
and then what is your criteria, basically?
Well, the category is called severe and persistent mental illness.
Okay.
So that typically are diagnoses, like I mentioned before, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, conditions that a primary care doctor typically wouldn't treat because it would be a little bit outside of their expertise and scope. And also, our clients cannot have private insurance, or we'd refer them to a different provider.
Yeah. I'm asking because when I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I had what I thought was probably some learning disabilities. I went to go see a psychologist that was really well known in the Southwest for working with people with ADD or ADHD. Spent 4 or 5 hours with him testing and all the rest of it. And what was interesting is the guy had a severe case of ADD. He even asked me when he created the bill, he said, "Would you please review this to make sure I have it correct?" And then I read a wonderful book by Tom Hartman called The Edison Gene about ADD. And I discovered that actually it can be a gift.
Yeah.
So that's how I use it. That's how I use it.
That's great. I feel that way too about bipolar disorder. That
say more.
It's a gift.
It's a gift.
There's actually a lot of positive attributes to it. And I've found that in myself, and a lot of the clients I've worked with tend to be very creative, think outside the box,
or create new ones.
Very bright.
Yeah.
And just cool people in general.
Yeah.
Often sensitive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. When we're sensitive to other people's emotions, or for me, I'm sensitive to everything, chemical sensitivities. I'm extremely sensitive. I'm very emotionally sensitive. I pick up on, the emotions around me. So I've had to learn how to protect myself that way, in working with a lot of pretty severe symptoms. And my last internship, I worked with San Diego Regional Center. So, I'm in a master's program of social work. So I'm doing internships.
That's right. Yeah, it's been challenging to get you in here for that reason, right?
Yeah, that's been part of the reason my schedule's pretty wild.
Yeah.
More demanding than I've ever had, I think. So in working with the clients I've been working with, I've needed to learn how to, I guess, stay, when someone's in a deep, dark hole, to not go down there with them, but to stay up at the top and help them.
What do you typically do? It depends.
It depends. Yeah, everyone's unique, and it's learning about them, and it's developing that rapport and trust, and then going from there, learning about their goals, where they want to be, and helping them reach those. But I've found in my own spiritual journey, it's become a lot more possible for me to stay in more of a spiritual perspective when I'm working with clients, and not to feel sadness or pity or even sympathy, but more empathy. And also seeing them as a spiritual being, not verbalizing that. Everyone has their own religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs, or it's very personal. I never try to challenge that or even discuss it if it's not something they want to discuss, but just holding that within myself, that vision of their higher self, and that they're a very courageous spirit to take on a path like that, because it's a very challenging path.
Yeah. Talking about misconceptions, I may have a misconception. I've always thought that schizophrenia were, basically a condition where people are just like a little bit over the edge. So once again, when I was in Santa Fe, I knew a lot of artists, musicians, and healers and stuff like that. And what was amazing is that there were a lot of the really good ones would go right to the edge without going over. There was just this, you could just tell, it's just like one step too far and it'd be too much. So
it's a fine line.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
Genius and madness is what they say.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I've seen. A lot of my clients that I've worked with are extremely artistic, creative, and all different forms of creativity, brilliant, in a lot of ways. So
could it be could it be said that could it be said that some of these people actually, once again, have a gift, but maybe don't know how to harness it, use it, or they've got something going on in their mind that, or something that frames it in a way that's just negative? And do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, definitely. And I want to be careful how I answer that question, because I don't want to deny the level of suffering that can be there with these types of conditions.
Okay.
I've experienced extreme physical pain with the Crohn's disease at times when I was having flare-ups, and yet the suffering I experienced with bipolar symptoms was so far beyond the physical suffering. And it's hard for people to understand that if they haven't experienced it. So I don't want to minimize the kind of suffering that comes with dealing with symptoms of schizophrenia or bipolar or, depression, anxiety. All of those things can be so much suffering for someone. And that's what kind of fuels my passion, is possibly, hopefully, alleviating some of that suffering and the years that it could go on. For me, like, there were years and years of where my life just felt like I was enduring suffering. And if I can be someone that helps a person shorten that time frame for them to get to a place of healing, then that makes it all worth it, if it's just even one person. So I would say, yes, reframing can be a very positive thing, and looking for the good in something. And that's what I feel has helped me a lot, and my mom in raising me. I know I've told this story quite a bit before, but she called it looking for the strawberry, which is the strawberry is the good in whatever situation, no matter how difficult or challenging or dire a situation seems, there's always some good there.
Yay, Mom.
So you want to find it. And I talk about that, with my clients. And I think as someone is able to see more and more of their strengths, and whether it comes with the condition or it's outside of it, or, we're all one. You can't really separate our mind from our physical, from our spiritual. Then I think they're more able to rise above all the challenging things and keep adding to their wellness tools. That's a term that is in the Copeland training, wellness tools. And those are very individualized for each person, like what works for them to help them stay well and help, if they're not feeling well, to help them feel better. And that's kind of what the definition of wellness tools are. So I just, schizophrenia can be a very devastating diagnosis because it's a difficult condition, and the symptoms can be very difficult. Sometimes there's a lack of insight from the person experiencing it, that they're not aware that it's an illness. They believe that, they're constantly being followed, if there's paranoia going on or delusional thinking, or, I have experienced in my manias a lot of psychosis, which is, people often fear that word, but it just means a break with reality. So my sense of reality was different than the majority of people. And who's to say it wasn't right? There's so many dimensions, I believe, and so many levels of perception. And I was in an altered state. And whether my normal state is, any more real than my altered state, I don't know. I knew when I was experiencing it, it all seemed very real. And some of those experiences were very spiritual for me, kind of mountaintop experiences. And I don't regret them, although it was also very destructive for my life physically. And I lost jobs and relationships and money. And there's a lot of things that go on that most people experience when they're having a full-blown manic episode. Can be pretty universal. A lot of things like shopping sprees and dangerous behaviors and not making good judgments or decisions. I was lucky. I think I had angels watching over me in those states, because nothing really bad happened to me. And part of it was probably because I would end up in a locked ward of a hospital, and at least I was somewhat safe in that, I couldn't go out and do crazy things. But so seeing the gift in the diagnosis, yes, I think when someone is at that stage where they're ready for that, and then it's a really important part of the recovery process. And even like changing the narrative or changing the story. You know, we all have that power to look back on our life and rewrite the story, because it's the past anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really real.
Yeah.
The only thing that's real is our memories of it. And
you can change how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you see it, how you feel about it, how you go from where you are now into the future, how you let that change, you know, how you see things from now on.
Yeah, I've just seen your toolbox as being extremely diverse and full.
Yeah, and I keep adding to it because I think I always can. There's always room for more.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. I've learned a lot over this journey, and I'm excited to share what I've learned with others. And
well, I want to figure out a way to continue this education on alternative health tools or something. You know, I'm serious. I have this feeling you've got a course inside you, or several, and maybe it's some of these speaking engagements. And I understand you're in school, so I might have to wait.
Yeah, I graduate in May 2017.
Okay. 2017?
It's not too far away, right?
No, it's not too far.
75% of the way through.
That's fantastic. That's great. So I wanted to ask you this. You talked a little bit about history and everything else, but can you talk about one defining moment where everything just like changed for you, or you made a decision?
You know, I think finding Dr. Klein's book was a defining moment in my life.
That title again?
Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's.
Got it.
And I embarked on that when I read the book, because I found it in some obscure way. I think I saw it mentioned in a blog online somewhere. I don't even remember what blog or what. And for years and years, I'd been searching, you know, for everything I could find that was natural and that would help me. And I never came across it until 3 years ago. It was June 2013 when I started this program. And I read the book and I had the sense that, oh my God, this is going to change everything. And I also had a sadness that I wish I had found this book 20 years ago, because I think he had written it back then. It had been written for quite a long time. And I wasn't really thinking so much about the mental health. I was just focused on really improving my physical health and getting a handle on the Crohn's for good. Like, I'd made a lot of progress with it, with all the research I'd done on my own, but I never got to where I thought I could be and where I wanted to be with the symptoms. And
Till you read Klein's book.
Yeah. And so I started following the program with his mentorship. He was working with me over the phone and through email, and he offers that service.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
He's awesome. He's helped over 2,000 people with severe GI issues to heal them. And he's had a 99% success rate.
Wow.
According to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like, no, I've never heard of any other kind of treatment that can say that, you know? So, I started it, and it took me several months to get through the initial cleansing, healing, detoxification process, which was difficult to go through. And once I got through that and I started adding in more things into my diet and getting stronger, building back up my muscle and my strength, not only was my physical health better than I'd ever experienced it, but mental health was a whole new level. And I wasn't even expecting that, because I wasn't doing it for that. And I thought my mood was stable at that point. I thought I was doing well with the bipolar stuff. And yet my default mood changed to joyful. Whereas before, I didn't realize that could be my default. There was kind of a fear against being too happy, because that meant I might be going into a manic episode, you know? Wow. So now, it's very easy. Well, I don't know how to say very easy, but it's kind of become, the norm for me to manage everything with this new program. And so that was a big turning point for me. That allowed me to make the decision to go back to school after I got my bachelor's degree over 20 years ago. So I hadn't been in school all that time, and to jump right into a master's program, it took a leap of faith.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I had to be confident enough that I could handle it. And so far, going through 2 years, I've handled it. My health has, I've somehow made it a priority.
Yeah,
taking
well,
care
it's
of
to be
myself.
celebrated.
Thanks.
You could celebrate that every day. Clink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, Dr. Klein introduced me to this woman, Susie Hoseas, who wrote Healing Bipolar and Depression.
Yes. I'm looking at the book right now.
Yeah. And so that was at the beginning when I was concerned about following this, because it seemed pretty far out there from, all the things I had looked at and tried. And so talking with her really helped me feel comfortable about embarking on this program, because what she did was very similar diet, very similar lifestyle changes, and she was able to heal her bipolar symptoms, which were very severe also. And reading her story, I really related to it, because her symptoms were like as severe as mine, I would say. And like I said, I haven't found too many people who've had as long manic episodes as I have that last for 6 months, where I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating very much. I'm just going, racing thoughts and racing body. And 6 months is pretty unheard of for a high like that. It's like, imagine someone high on cocaine for 6 months straight. Like,
That would be, I have no idea.
yeah.
It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's hard for me to understand how my body survived that kind of state for so long. It creates extreme physical exhaustion. I could have died from a heart attack in that state or something. So, yeah, reading her book too made me feel confident that I was following the right program. And yeah, so I think, I know you had asked about my diet earlier, and basically I follow a vegan diet, so no animal products, and primarily fruits and vegetables, as close to the state that nature provides them in. So not a lot of cooking or processing, or I make a lot of green smoothies.
Yeah.
I don't add protein powder. I don't use oils, no salt, just the whole foods.
Yeah.
Because fats and oils, from what I've learned, are the hardest to digest of all the different foods. And
do you know Dr. Ginger by any chance? You ever heard of her?
I don't think so.
She was on Oz last summer.
Okay.
And I've got a recording I did with her I'm going to release in a couple of weeks. But she got known, and I ended up on Dr. Oz for the rainbow juice diet. So it's just incredible juicing, like rainbow of fruits. I don't think a whole lot of vegetables, although I don't know.
When I first started Dr. Klein's program, I was juicing every day. And I have a juicer. And
what do you use? I'm just curious.
A Champion.
Oh, yeah. Champion.
I had it from when I was a teenager, because that's when I first got interested in vegetarianism, and I read Fit for Life.
Yep.
Harvey and Marilyn Diamond, who promote a natural hygiene philosophy. So I've kind of come full circle, and going back to natural hygiene.
Yeah.
But yeah, juicing can be great. I found that after I got through that cleansing period and letting my GI tract rest, then the fiber was more important, and I could handle it. And I think fiber is really important. So when you juice, you are taking the fiber out.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting enough fiber, then you need to somehow get it.
Well, you have a Champion, then you have your Vitamix.
Yes, and I make a lot of green smoothies, which keeps the fiber in them. Yeah. So basically, I get a lot of my calories from fruit. And during the day, that's what I eat, fruits and greens. So by greens, that means lettuces and all different kale and things like cilantro and parsley and leafy things, celery, cucumber. Green. Yeah. And the other vegetables I save for dinner. So more of the starchy vegetables. I do lightly steam things like yams and potatoes and squashes sometimes when I want more cooked vegetables. So I'm not a raw vegan, like people who are raw vegans, they don't steam anything typically. But close to a raw vegan diet, because I don't typically eat grains. I do my best. I feel my best when I'm not eating any grains. People say, oh, well, do you eat gluten-free? And I'm like, well, beyond gluten-free, kind of grain-free, and a lot of vegetarians rely on beans, and I don't eat beans. They're hard for me to digest. So it's pretty much sticking to the fruits and vegetables, and then nuts and seeds more sparingly.
So can I boil it down to the fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, the things that make you feel better? Like if it doesn't feel good doing the beans, you don't do the beans.
Right. And there are some times when my body will crave things like
Yeah.
soybeans.
Yeah.
And I eat some and I'm fine because my body wanted it.
Exactly.
You know? And so I'm open to that. I'm not rigid or
Right.
super strict about, I have to be following it exactly this way. I listen to my body and it tells me now very clearly. The messages are much more clear than they were before I started this.
Yeah.
And it's immediate too. Like if I eat something, I can even smell it and tell, this is what I want. And this is what I don't.
I know, you know that I have my new priority really is just, body, do you feel it? And you can know it's true because you do feel it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because way too many people are running around not feeling much.
Yeah. And I think, our lifestyle, our fast paced now. And swallowing a pill is a lot easier than going out for a half-hour brisk walk.
Yes.
But I think the walk is probably more effective than the pill as far as depression. I mean, there's a lot of studies that show exercise can be as effective, if not more effective, than antidepressants. And getting sunlight and good sleep and all of those things. I don't, one of my things that I do want to speak out about, that I feel passionate about, is how in the mental health field we equate treatment with medication.
Mm-hmm.
The word treatment, mental health treatment, primarily means medication. And so if a patient is being non-compliant with their medication, that word just irks me because there are valid reasons to not want to take medication. It doesn't mean the person doesn't want to get well, or they're being resistant, or they're being a bad patient. I felt all those things in the past when I would go to a psychiatrist and not want to follow what they said. Sometimes I wouldn't tell them that I wasn't doing exactly what they said because I didn't want to be a bad patient. So it's shifting that whole empowerment. Now when I walk into my doctor's office, I know that there's two experts in the room. I'm the expert on me. No doctor or no other person can be an expert on me. And I respect their expertise in their area for sure.
But you have yours.
Yes.
And everybody does have theirs, even if they haven't even if they haven't walked your walk, they can certainly start by just, how do you feel?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, the clinic where I work, we're a medication management clinic. So our primary service is medication, and the psychiatrists we have to help people, do well on their medication. And so if they don't want to take medication, we can't see them. We can't offer them other services like our groups, or I lead a lot of groups at the clinic, and so do the other clinicians. Really great groups. Things that I like group therapy because it's very valuable in people getting the support from the other group members and feeling not alone because other people share, I experienced that too, and this is what helped me. Or so I see a lot of value in that group experience in addition to the individual therapy.
Yeah, it's sort of like crowdfunding.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah. So what other resources for people, what other resources could you lay down besides the books and things we've already talked about?
There's a lot out there,
okay.
And I would say for someone in San Diego County who is looking for specific resources related to behavioral health, mental health, substance abuse, and other things too, outside of behavioral health, a good first place to start is to call 211. 211 San Diego is like a clearinghouse.
211 San Diego?
Well, you can go on their website, or you can just pick up your phone and dial 211.
Oh, 211. Okay.
And you tell them what you're looking for, and they pull it up and give you the information.
That's awesome. So here's the thing is that this show is heard in, I think, 97 countries.
Yeah. So I realize other places do have similar types of services.
In terms of, what are your top 3 websites for resources? And I realize some of these
international. Well, regarding bipolar disorder, I've really enjoyed working with the International Bipolar Foundation.
Okay.
And I've done talks for them. I'm really impressed with their website. They have a wealth of information on there, and they archive all their talks and webinars and on their website. So a webinar that I did for them last year in March of 2015 is archived on their website, and it can be found. Actually, the easiest way is to Google my name, Serena Goldsmith, and it should be the first thing that comes up is my webinar on International Bipolar Foundation's website. But that website in general is awesome for looking for resources for bipolar disorder. Dr. Klein has several websites if you want to look at GI conditions and healing those. So one of them is digestionperfection.com. And
digestionperfection.com.
Yeah. So let me see if I have another list here.
She has a list of resources, let me tell you.
I have several lists, yes. But I'm thinking international wise. So another local one, which I want to point out, it's called the Access and Crisis Line. And so for those who are in San Diego, if you or a loved one have a serious mental illness and are in a crisis situation, whether it's suicidality or any kind of crisis, you can call that number and someone will answer and talk you through it and tell you the next step. If it's an emergency, call 911. Or there's also in several cities, the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team, or PERT. That is part of a police department, and they have a well-trained police officer who's trained in mental health crises, as well as a clinician on a team, and they go out to calls. They're not, I know in Oceanside, they're not available 24/7, but when they are available, we always like to call them first because they're trained in dealing with mental health issues. And I know for me, there were several times that I was taken to a hospital by the police in handcuffs in the back of a police car. So I don't know that it was the PERT team that did that, but my experience was they were very kind.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but there's procedures they have to follow and for the safety of the person and everything. But that's a little bit of a side. It's part of my other story that I haven't gone into detail in.
Yeah. Well, we could save that one.
The Access and Crisis Line is 888-724-7240. And that's because they're available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And they're not just for crises, they're also for access to resources. So let's say someone has Medicaid or in California, Medi-Cal, and they're looking for a therapist. They can call the Access and Crisis Line, and they'll give you a list of like 3 therapists in your area that accept Medi-Cal. So things like that, they're part of the county service.
Yeah, nice. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Exceptional, but truth is everybody that's been on this show is really exceptional. And I'm really wanting to open up alternative health tools to more and more and more people. We did the party last Sunday, and everybody said, let's do it once a month. Let's not wait 2 years. Let's do it once a month.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to wanting to figure out, just what day is going to be best and all that. So.
Yeah, I think that's powerful when you have a group of people who are all working to help others and make the world a better place, and sharing our different approaches and perspectives and knowledge and experiences together.
Yeah, and collaborative resources.
Yeah, it's powerful.
I mean, I just see mutual beneficial energy. I mean, that whole time.
Yeah, and a lot of my conversations with some of the other people were related to that, as far as, how can I refer someone to you and vice versa? And, I need to know more about that, and it would help my clients. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we want to do that. So
that's great.
Is there anything else you'd like to cover?
I just want to say thank you for doing the work that you do and bringing this information out into the world from all of the people that you've been interviewing and the future people to come. I think it's a wonderful thing that people have access to this information, and I look forward to doing more. I look forward to writing books after I graduate. Because I want the things that I've learned and what I'm continuing to learn to be available to others, and in whatever ways I can best do that. And now with social media offering so many different opportunities for that, I'm very interested to get more involved in this area. Yeah. Well,
like I said, this will be released this next Tuesday. And I know you're on a busy schedule, but even within a week or so, if you had time to do a video, like with what Carrie and I did, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because I know some people are going to love listening to this and want to have a little chat.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So everything we mentioned will be in the show notes, and really encourage you to pass this on. And, of course, you can always go to the website and go to the Contact Us page. And there's actually also a place there to schedule a call. And if you know anybody that you think should be on the show or you'd like to be on the show, just, schedule a call and let's chat. All right?
Yeah.
Serena, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.